earth. As I arranged, or rather rearranged these selections, I became aware that I really have nothing new to offer you today. But then I don't think Christmas is so new either, this 1966th Christmas, as we counted. So I would suggest that from the familiar, we draw our new experiences, our new understandings, and perhaps our new insights. So I will begin by reading a well-known selection from A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It was written 123 years ago. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas when it has come around, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and it will do me good. And I say, God bless it. Of course, you know that these words were spoken by the nephew to that squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, Scrooge. And I'm sure you know both the gentlemen, even if you haven't had an opportunity to squeeze your way into the Dickens village on the 8th floor at Dayton's. I would suggest that even Marley's ghost is better known today than hundreds of real Englishmen who lived in London that cold, foggy, grim, bitter eve in the year of 1843. From our own century comes also a great Christmas classic, Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales. It begins, as you know, the poet thinking back on Christmas begins by saying, "One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the sea-town corner, now out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep, that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or if it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. This Christmas carol I am sure you will hear again this season, read, no doubt, in the poet's own voice. Remembering Christmases past. Some of us have many, all of us have some to remember. From our own region, here in the Middle West, Hamlin Garland remembered as a man his 15th Christmas. And he wrote, "My first Christmas tree. I don't think it had many candles, and I don't remember that it glittered at all. But I still remember the first glimpse of that wonderful tree standing in a country church, a poor little building without tower or bell. As I write this, there stands in my library a thick-branched, tapering fir tree covered with gold and purple apples, crystal points, gilded grapes, glittering angels. But I doubt if my children will ever know the keen pleasure that is almost pain, which came to me when I brought to that Christmas nothing but a keen appetite and empty hands." Much of the imaginative writing about Christmas centers around the events as they are recorded in the Gospel. The writer seems to say, what was it really like? What was it like for Mary and Joseph to take that journey to Bethlehem? From Henry Van Dyke's The Journey to Bethlehem, this brief description. It was a long, hard journey. There were no angelic wings to carry them over the rough places. No rich traveler offered them a lift in his chariot. There was no miracle to remove the hardship or shorten the weary miles of the long, long way. It was plain plodding, step after step for the 100 miles, with only a poor little donkey to carry the scanty baggage, and to let Mary ride on his back when she was too tired to put one foot before the other. And how were things in that little town, especially in the inn where there was no room? In a monologue, the innkeeper speaks in the year 28 A.D., and according to the poet, he says, "What could be done? The inn was full of folk. His honor, Marcus Lucius, and his scribes who made the census, honorable men from furthest Galilee came hitherward to be enrolled. High ladies and their lords, the rich, the rabbis, such a noble throng as Bethlehem had never seen before, and may not see again. And here they were, close-herded with their servants, till this inn was like a hive at swarming time, and I was fairly crazed among them. Could I know that they were so important? Just the two, no servants, just a workman sort of man leading a donkey, and his wife thereon, drooping and pale. I saw them not myself. My servants must have driven them away. And how were we to know? There was a sign, they say, a heavenly light resplendent. But I had no time for stars. And there were songs of angels in the air, out on the hills. But how was I to hear amid the 1,000 clamors of an inn? Alas, to miss a chance like that. This inn that might have been the birthplace of Messiah, had I known. And a voice from the shepherds who saw the glory and heard the song. Again, a very brief monologue. The angel said, "We should not fear. But how could we, whose lives were drear with bleating lambs and stupid sheep, our gaze upon such glory keep, and not go blind with wonder?" A great deal has been written about those who followed the star. A short selection from Auden's The Christmas Oratorio, and I know I am intruding upon what you will hear on Wednesday. But here a wise man speaks. The weather has been awful. The countryside is dreary, marsh, jungle, rock. Echoes mock, calling our hope unlawful. But a silly song can help along, yours ever and sincerely. At least we know for certain that we are 3 old sinners, that this journey is much too long, that we want our dinners, we miss our wives, our books, our dogs, and have only the vaguest idea why we are what we are. To discover how to be human now is the reason we follow this star. And T.S. Eliot's very well known The Journey of the Magi, spoken by one of the wise men, now grown old, in a resigned, not a joyous voice. A cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of the year for a journey, and such a long journey. The ways deep, the weather sharp, the very dead of winter, and the camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, and the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men cursing and grumbling and running away and wanting their liquor and women, and the night fires going out and the lack of shelters. The city's hostile, the town's unfriendly, and the villages dirty and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. At the end, we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches, with the voices singing in our ears, saying that this was all folly. Then at dawn, we came down to a temperate valley, wet below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, with a running stream and a watermill beating the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky, and an old white horse galloping away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel, 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskins. But there was no information, and so we continued and arrived at evening, not a moment too soon finding the place. It was, you may say, satisfactory. All this was a long time ago. I remember, and I would do it again. But set down this. Were we led all that way for birth or death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence, and no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death. And what really did the event mean? Even the disciples came to Jesus once and said, "Are you the Christ, or do we seek an other?" William Butler Yeats, in a very brief poem, The Magi, speaks of seeking an other. Now, as at all times, I can see in the mind's eye, in their stiff painted clothes, the pale, unsatisfied ones appear and disappear in the blue depth of the sky, with all their ancient faces like rain-beaten stones, and all their helms of silver hovering side by side, and all their eyes still fixed, hoping to find once more, being by Calvary's turbulence unsatisfied, the uncontrollable mystery on the bestial floor. But the voice of the believer speaks also in poetry, and here again I turn back to Auden's Christmas oratorio. And because of his visitation, we may no longer desire God as if he were lacking. Our redemption is no longer a question of pursuit, but of surrender to him who is always and everywhere present. Therefore, at every moment we pray that, following him, we may depart from our anxiety into his peace. He is the way. Follow him through the land of unlikeness. You will see rare beasts and have unique adventures. He is the truth. Seek him in the kingdom of anxiety. You will come to a great city that has expected your return for years. He is the life. Love him in the world of the flesh, and at your marriage all its occasions shall dance for joy. Again, we face the fact, unto us a child is born. What does it mean at Christmas time for you and for me? Sigrid Undset, in a brief Christmas meditation, wrote, "The old masters were not afraid to paint the little newborn Jesus Christ quite realistically. The sweet, downy child's head is large in relation to the body. The limbs are painfully thin. The tiny infant lies on the bare, cold, earthy floor. At the best, he is given only a handful of straw or a little white cloth spread out under him. One feels tempted to follow the example of the shepherds in the old mystery plays and give the young mother good advice about child management. But the upright and slender young Virgin Mary kneels, deeply sunk in meditation and prayer. She looks at her little son, whom she has borne in her womb, and in whom she sees her God and Savior, the Creator, who has chosen this world as his throne, being the night sky above, with its myriad of stars, being but a corner of his mantle, which he has cast around his mother and himself. Joseph, faithful and upright, stands on guard, and near him are the angels, trusty advisers to the carpenter. They have arrayed themselves in visible shapes, made themselves very beautiful for the occasion. They are wearing richly folded white linen tunics. Their hair falls in luxurious curls around their smiling faces. To keep unruly locks tidy, they have put on their heads crowns of gold and garlands of flowers. It is only their master and king who can come to the festival without being decked out. The heavens are his and the earth. He has laid the foundation of this ball of earth and all that is upon it, and now he is coming to us as the lowliest of us all to serve us. For so it was foreordained in God's counsels from all eternity, God's secret counsels, at which we, in our smallness and ignorance, so often take offense. Is not this the last and most mysterious reason for the joy of Christmas? That the world has been turned upside down, that the Almighty has laid aside his insignia of office to receive our gifts, if we want to give them to him. And when we give one another our Christmas presents, let us remember that he has given us the sun and the moon and the stars, the earth with its forests and mountains and oceans, and all that lives and moves upon them. He has given us all green things, and everything that blossoms and bears fruits, and all that we quarrel about, and all that we misuse. And to save us from our own foolishness, he has come down to earth to give himself.